Have you ever fallen in love out of nowhere with someone completely different from you? A 59-year-old woman who swims twice a week. It seemed impossible, at least until I met our new instructor at the local pool, Alexander. On the way to the pool that day, I thought I'd find myself in the comforting familiarity of my routine. As always, I'd packed my gym bag, carefully folded my swimsuit and towel. Water always fills me with a sense of peace when I'm swimming. It's as if everything stops for a while, and as my body glides through the cool water, all my thoughts drift away. I'd gotten used to it over the years, but when I heard Alexander's calm, confident voice, something inside me lit a spark I hadn't felt in a long time. Alexander, when I heard his name I glanced over. He had broad shoulders, strong arms, and that easy smile that was always on his face. Even on the other side of the pool, leading the children in line and giving instructions, he had that relaxed, assured presence. Young men in their world had long been very different from mine, and I usually didn't pay much attention to them, but Alexander broke through all that right then. I felt myself being drawn to him, and there was no denying it. In the weeks that followed, I found myself running into Alexander often. Each time he gave me this look, a mixture of warmth and excitement that left me both calm and a little exhilarated. Calm and a little exhilarated. A few weeks later, after I had finished my laps, he came over to me and said, "You have an incredible punching technique," his eyes serious and full of admiration. No one had ever noticed my form like that before. In those moments under the warmth of his gaze, I couldn't help but feel a rush of excitement. One day, after training, he came by to give me some tips on my swimming technique. As I looked at him more closely, I noticed the definition of his muscles, the width of his shoulders, the way his damp hair fell on his forehead, and strangely I felt a sense of excitement. One day, during one of these lessons, it felt as if he was standing a little closer than usual, gently touching my shoulders and showing me how to move, and for a moment I felt as if I could barely breathe. I couldn't breathe, and a small smile crept across my face. Alexander didn't look away, he just kept looking at me. "Is everything okay?" he asked, his voice unusually warm. I was surprised, but I loved the excitement, the mix of emotions, and in that moment I loved being close to him. I was nearing the end of my training that day, and my pace was slowing. I was gliding through the water, enjoying the coolness as always, but suddenly my foot slipped and a sharp pain shot through my ankle. A severe pain spread up my leg as I tried to get out on my own. Everything just seemed to get harder and harder. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice soft but with a hint of urgency. "I think I twisted my ankle." I barely managed to say why. In an instant I found myself in his arms. He lifted me up and held me carefully, and I could feel the warmth of his arms around me. My heart started to race, and I quickly looked away, hoping he wouldn't notice. As Alexander carried me to the treatment room by the pool, I became aware of my bold red swimsuit, how it hugged my figure, how it clung to my curves, the bright red color. The excitement of the moment wrapped around me. The thought that he might be just as affected as I was crept into my mind. My heart was pounding with excitement as he gently placed me on the treatment bed, and I noticed that he kept his hand on mine just a little longer. The warmth in his gaze left an even stronger impression on me in that brief moment. Neither of us said a word, but it felt as if our feelings were somehow passing silently between us. Alexander said in a low voice, "I'll need to put some ice on your ankle," and he reached for a nearby ice pack. Even the chill of the ice wasn't enough. Those few seconds when we were both silent, lost in the moment, felt like they lasted much longer. As he helped me, I could feel his eyes studying every detail of me with careful attention. "I don't like to see you like this," he said with a slight smile. His voice was soft and gentle, but it felt like there was something more behind his words, and at that moment I became even more aware of the silent attraction between us. The feeling that he was as affected by me as I was by him, combined with the allure of my red swimsuit, made everything even more intense. This little injury seemed to have stirred up emotions in both of us that had been kept under the surface. Alexander gently held my injured ankle and carefully set the ice pack aside. The Warmth of his fingers on my skin quickly made me forget the chill of the ice as he gently massaged my ankle. I tried to look away, but I couldn't. I couldn't hide the thrill that was building up inside me. With each touch I took a deep breath, hoping it would calm me somehow. "This might hurt a little," he whispered softly. His gaze was tense, but there was something else in his eyes, something deep, a magnetic pull as his hand slowly moved from my ankle up towards my arm. Suddenly, his hands moved to my shoulder, his eyes never leaving mine. As the space between our lips grew smaller, my breath caught, and then everything happened at once. Alexander's lips met mine, slowly, almost hesitantly. In that moment, all the complicated feelings inside me surfaced at once as the warmth spread in waves over my face. I couldn't resist him, the softness of his lips, the passion in his touch. I was completely swept away by the magic of this moment. My hands instinctively moved to his shoulders, wanting to feel him closer. My heart was beating faster. I felt a rush of energy I hadn't felt in a long time. A mixture of excitement and a hint of fear, but right now being in his arms made everything feel right. This unexpected kiss exploded in a single moment, instantly bridging our two worlds together in the silence. I wanted to feel this moment even more, to let go of everything and just feel. I could feel how close Alexander was. The distance between us had almost disappeared. The thought that he was my best friend's son kept echoing in my mind, and a voice inside me told me that he was my best friend's son. Alexander hesitated for a moment, his eyes holding a question, almost a hint of doubt, but then he leaned down to my neck and caressed me gently, his lips against my skin. My breath caught, all rational thought vanished, melting into the spell of his touch. "Stop, this shouldn't be happening," I mumbled, but my voice sounded more like an invitation. His kisses moved from my neck to my shoulders, making me forget any hesitation. He broke down all my boundaries, and with each breath I fell deeper into him. With each kiss the forbidden pull between us grew stronger, and I was completely under his control. I tried to hold back, but each time I surrendered a little more, my mind went silent and my body surrendered to him. What was happening was like storms raging inside me. All my resistance broke down. An hour later I woke up beside Alexander's warmth. I lifted myself up slightly and looked at his face. He was peaceful and content, but I was caught in a deep conflict, the sweet excitement of ID now mixed with a pang of guilt. I quickly got up and slipped out. When I got home I was still reeling from the ordeal I had just endured. I was in a state of shock, and I was afraid I would never be able to get out of it. I was still shaken by the intense emotions I felt as the warm water touched my skin. Memories of Alexander's touch came flooding back to my mind, the gentle yet powerful pressure of his lips on my neck, his warm breath. My heart began to race again, just as it had in that moment. But as I stepped out of the shower and looked at myself in the mirror, I felt a pang of guilt. But when I stepped out of the shower and looked at myself in the mirror, the turmoil inside me returned, two voices echoing in my head, one telling me that what I had done was wrong, that I shouldn't have let it happen, the fact that Alexander was my best friend's son, the age difference between us, all of it repeated over and over in the rational side of my mind. Even though I went to work the next day, I couldn't concentrate all day. Every time I remembered Alexander's seductive gaze, the feel of his hand on my neck, the warmth his lips had left on mine, my mixed feelings intensified. I wanted to go back to the pool to see him again, but I kept asking myself if it was right to let myself be swept away in a moment of attraction, to abandon everything, to break every boundary. At night I couldn't sleep. As I tossed and turned in bed, my hands unconsciously ran over my neck as if I wanted to feel his lips on mine. When I closed my eyes it was as if I was reliving that night over and over again in my mind. Alexander's expression, his touch, even the tone of his voice, these thoughts burned inside me, drawing me back to him. I tried to control myself, to stop thinking about him, to prove to myself that these feelings didn't matter, but each time the longing inside me grew stronger, as if I would be incomplete if I didn't see him again. Without those looks, those touches, there was now an emptiness inside me that I stubbornly refused to go back to. But that didn't stop my footsteps from taking me to the pool. Even though I made promises to myself, my thoughts always ended up in the same place. I wanted to go back to the pool to see him again, the desire to be near him to relive those moments was overwhelming. This forbidden pull just wouldn't let go of me, and every time I felt myself taking a step closer to him, all my rational thoughts faded away. One evening, as I stood in front of the mirror and looked at my own face, I had to admit that these feelings I had for him were far more real than I had thought. This attraction was irresistible. No matter how much I tried to hold myself back, I couldn't escape what I felt for him, and all this emotional turmoil felt as if it was desperately trying to push me back to Alexander.